Hello there, this is Pratiksha Mishra, and you're listening to Do I Like It, a Quint production where we review anything and everything under the sun. And in this episode, we're going to talk about Lust Stories 2. While I was watching Lust Stories 2, I was almost, I don't know, like I tried not to compare things to their predecessors because, ठीक है, मतलब I tried to see it as a sole entity, but I felt almost compelled to go back and watch Last Story 1 and kind of understand कि क्या चल रहा है इन दोनों anthologies में. One thing that kind of stood out to me is the topic of who do we afford this luxury of desire as such. Starting से let's talk about Indian cinema for example. जो desire as a subject, lust as a subject, who was allowed this? It's practically always been the male hero. क्योंकि जैसे कि हम पहले बहुत बात कर चुके, everyone has been talking about this कि a lot of times women were mostly just there as love interests. So we never saw anything beyond how the hero was viewing the heroine. You know, any sensuality, any sexuality was seen through the hero's lens. Ki, oh, this is how he's viewing the heroine. And now throughout the film, we're going to see how they get together. Other than that, also since we hadn't really had great conversations around consent earlier, a lot of these desire or lust was very much just the female characters getting harassed. You know, like stalking was so common in Bollywood. And all of this, in essence, showed you that women were kept out of these conversations of desire. पहली बात तो a woman feeling desire in itself was considered so taboo कि हमें देखने को ही ज़्यादा नहीं मिलता था ये. Films like Lipstick Under My Burqa, for example, explored concepts of female desire and people were so bad, so pressed about it. So when Lust Stories decided to do the same, kind of explore lust through a female lens, it was very refreshing to watch. Before I go deeper into this, I want to tell you that you can watch our other episodes of this series or other podcasts from The Quint on our website or wherever you get your podcasts from. Uske saath saath hi, what else do we have here? It's always the privileged who had access to lust or access to desire. Matlab across say class divide, caste divide, sexuality, gender, all these hierarchies, it's always the people who were societally placed on like the top of these hierarchies who got to experience desire. We very rarely saw homosexual desire, for example. What could I even name for that? Like Made in Heaven, maybe we saw it. We obviously have some great queer films made by queer filmmakers, but uske outside all of that, we didn't have much in Bollywood as such. Bollywood mein queer people were mostly just used as horror elements or to like laugh at them. तो इसमें डिज़ायर का तो क्वेश्चन कहीं आता ही नहीं था. वी समटाइम्स सॉ अ हीरो बीइंग अट्रैक्टेड टू अ ट्रांस वुमन बट दैट वाज प्लेड ऑफ बाय लाफ्स बिकॉज इट वाज लाइक व्हाट अ हॉरिबल थिंग हैज हैपेंड टू दिस पुअर हीरो. Queer people, trans people weren't afforded the luxury of desire. In the other sense, a lot of minority groups, all we saw was kind of horrible violence happen against them, often sexual violence, and the hero would come and essentially take revenge for them or kind of avenge the day and, you know, save everyone, blah, blah, blah. This happens very frequently with female characters so much, but you'll also see disproportionately happens to people from oppressed castes, characters who are from oppressed castes or characters who are not in like the upper echelons of society. But in Lust Stories, they do flip that a little bit. First wale maybe or second wale maybe. First wale Lust Stories mein I think the shot with Bhumi Pednekar shows desire while exploring caste divide, how the man in the situation still has the upper hand in this situation despite the fact that he is very much in a sexual relationship with his domestic help. In the second Lust Stories, this is also explored through Konkana Sharma's shot, which also a brilliant example of like female voyeurism, which hasn't been seen in cinema for a very long time. Again, because any desire that was coming from a female character was seen just as shameful. So, you know, refreshing to see that. But in this also, jo short film hai, in that we see Seema's desire, but we also see that the voyeurism, since coming from her employer, is a violation of consent in the beginning. Kyunki maybe she does not feel like she needs to ask for consent, or maybe she feels like, oh, people are going to believe her no matter what, which is what we see when their argument breaks out, you know. So there's a huge class divide there as well. But the short is not telling you that, oh, this is right or this is wrong. It's just telling you that desire exists in all spheres, in all groups, in all social groups, that lust shouldn't be a luxury, right? You can't just be like, oh, only these sections of society are allowed to feel lust. It's just a very reductionist way of looking at something as like desire, right? So that's very interesting to see. Also, the fact that there is a little bit of queerness to Sharma's short itself, not in the sense of having properly queer, like same sex leads, but in the fact that it exists outside cis man, cis woman desire that we have seen for so long in cinema. It exists outside of that. We actually get to see more than that, and that's very refreshing to see. It's actually my favorite shot of the entire Love Stories too. I also like how it challenges the notion of premarital sex in general is very interesting because both Love Stories 1 and Love Stories 2 have this idea of arranged marriage, I think, happening. And we see how, because we don't have conversations around sex, because we kind of use lust as something that is shameful, the marriages are often like unhealthy and toxic because nobody is happy. The women are unhappy because nobody is discussing desire at all, and it becomes more like an obligation than anything else. But usi ke sath sath, there's a shot that also deals with the very very real issue of marital rape, and how that is also something that needs to be discussed, right? That sex is not a given just because you're in a romantic relationship with someone. I, of course, have my qualms about the Love Stories 2 ka shot, I think, directed by Amit Sharma. I have my qualms about that. I have my thoughts about that. But I am comparatively glad that, even though I don't think it makes sense in Love Stories as such, I'm glad that they're having the conversation, because that's very important. I then debates hote rehte hain Twitter pe, and they're so brutally triggering to read. So it's nice for someone to actually have that conversation on a platform like Love Stories. I think that's mostly what I've been thinking about. Like, who do we afford the luxury to have desire, to have lust? Like, are we, through being prudish, are we perpetuating these kind of divides where we only think that a certain person, a certain kind of person can feel lust or desire? And it just, like, just does not make sense. And I am glad that shows like Love Stories are actually trying to address that, are actually trying to make a bit of a difference. Those are all my thoughts about Love Stories 1 and Love Stories 2. If you're wondering which one I like better, I would say I do like Love Stories 1 better. I think all of those stories came together more cohesively, तो देखने में ज़्यादा मज़ा आया था. But Love Story, like overall, if you ask me, Love Stories 2 का short that is directed by Konkana Sen Sharma, starring Tilotama Shome and Amrita Subhash, is my favorite shot in the Love Stories franchise, if you will. I have loved no other story as much as I enjoyed this one. It was so well made. In the first one, I think the Vicky Kaushal and Kiara Advani one is a very good story. But yeah, it's pretty fun. I hope you guys watched Love Stories. I mean, if you didn't, it's your choice, honestly. But if you did, and if you have thoughts that you would like to share, I would love to listen to them. So you can reach out to me on Twitter or on Instagram, and I would love to hear you out. I love listening to your thoughts about shows and films. If you feel like recommending something that I should watch, I would also be very interested in that. So hit me up. And yeah, that was all for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Do I Like It is a Quint production, executive produced by Ritu Kapoor and Sherry Walia, hosted by me, Pratiksha Mishra, produced and edited by Anjali Palod, with music from Netflix and BMG Production. See you next time.
You were listening to the Quince podcast.